So here we are again, another Teaser Tuesday. I'm going to read to you today from my book that's coming out on September 8th, A Pride of Brothers, AIDEN. It's book 2 in the Pride of Brothers book. And this one stars AIDEN, the youngest brother of the Keene brothers, and Lexi Buckley, who is a PhD librarian whose sister supposedly committed suicide. Lexi doesn't think she did. So this entire romantic suspense book revolves around the fact that Leslie doesn't believe what she's been told by the police. When she meets AIDEN haphazardly, or mistakenly I should say, on an airline, she thinks he's the answer to her dreams. So let me start. I've never read and spoken at the same time, so if my eyes flick off, it's because I'm reading from the screen. Okay, so A Pride of Brothers, AIDEN, Chapter 1. Here you go, sir. The waitress dropped AIDEN's order next to his beer and placed the billfold alongside it. I'll take this when you're ready. With a distracted smile, she moved to the next customer along the busy airport bar. Tired, hungry, and itching to get home, AIDEN bit into his pre-flight meal and all but sighed. A greasy burger, an ice-cold beer, and thoughts of his own bed were the only things keeping him sane right now. Less than 3 hours ago, he had given his report to the client, then managed to book a last-minute flight home. Home, one of his 2 favorite 4-letter words, both of which he'd been missing of late. What his brother Josh had billed as a quick turnaround job had turned into a dumpster fire straight out of the gate. Unable to get to the root of the problem from his New York office, AIDEN had flown to Atlanta to work directly from the client's home turf. The promised quick resolution morphed into 2 weeks, then 8, until AIDEN finally caught a break and identified who'd been bilking the company's corporate funds. After he'd handed over his detailed report, naming the CFA's much younger wife and her computer hacker lover as the culprits, and providing irrefutable proof, AIDEN walked out of the owner's office and cabbed it straight to the airport. With the prospect of a few days off before heading back to the private investigations firm he co-owned with his brothers, AIDEN ate and flipped through his mental Rolodex for who could help him satisfy the other 4-letter word occupying his mind. It had been a while since he'd enjoyed a woman's company, since he never mixed business with pleasure. A long while. He took a generous pull on his beer, let his gaze drift around the crowded bar, and indulged in one of his favorite pastimes, people watching. Or, as his older brother Dylan referred to it, asshole surveillance. Since he was in an airport bar where happy hour occurred 24/7, Dylan's description was the more accurate one. The 3 middle-aged women sitting across from him, passing a cell phone back and forth, all the while laughing like they'd had more than a few Cosmos, told him they were heading home from a fun-filled girls' getaway and reliving their antics through selfie scrolling. The 30-ish guy, a few stools down from them, a half-finished beer in front of him, and a cell phone propped next to him, his laptop, screamed, workaholic businessman, trying to get a little more accomplished before heading off to his next meeting. The guy's attention flicked back and forth from the computer screen to the phone, as if willing it to ring. 2 flight attendants in uniform huddled in a corner, both sipping from coffee cups, a guy in a pilot's uniform seated with them. Since they all looked pretty awake and fresh, AIDEN figured they were waiting to head for their first flight of the day. Overhead, the arrival and departure announcements were white noise in the already cacophonous terminal. Babies crying, kids whining, their harried parents arguing as they sped between connecting flights were all a subtle hum. AIDEN had the unique ability to shut it all out, quiet the racket, and concentrate his attention on whatever he needed or wanted to. Right now, it was the smiling redhead on the other side of the bar and her drinking companion, who behaved like a man who'd recently returned from being lost in the Sahara for days. The moment he banged one empty glass down on the counter, he signaled to the bartender to pour another. With each refill, the redhead got a little closer until she was a sigh away from sitting in the guy's lap. They'd already been seated when AIDEN took his stool and ordered, so he didn't know if they had arrived together or had become fast and furious drinking buddies. Well, the guy was drinking. The redhead appeared to be enjoying sparkling water from what he could see. From 15 feet away, AIDEN noted the concentrated way she pressed against her friend, talking close to his ear, one hand flirtatiously snaking up and down his expensive suit sleeve, and the other hidden from view under the bar top. That hand was either rubbing the guy's thigh or trying to find its way into his pocket to lift his wallet. The latter notion got tossed when AIDEN spotted the wallet sitting next to the half-empty beer glass. So, the thigh it was. Lucky bastard. long lashes-framed eyes tilting up a bit in the corners, cheekbones molded from ripe apples pulled up when she smiled, showing perfect white teeth. A cascade of shiny red curls drifted below her shoulder blades. When she dragged one finger behind her ear, tucking a trendle, and then gave the lobe a quick squeeze, Aiden's fingers tightened around his beer glass. The move, innately sensual, had the tips of his fingers itching to follow her lead and run them through her hair, down the slim column of her throat, across the swell of her breasts. She leaned in and whispered something that had the guy's eyes widening and an expectant smirk slashing his face. A seductive grin crossed her lush mouth, and for a hot second Aiden's gut tightened, imagining what those lips would feel like pressed against his. Damn, he really needed to get home. Drunk Guy tugged a card from his open wallet, and a quick movement from the redhead's hidden hand had Aiden squinting. She patted the guy's forearm and placed a swift peck to his cheek, leaving a crimson imprint in the wake. Lifting her purse from the bar, she hopped from the stool, then sauntered away while he motioned for the bartender to settle the tab. Aiden tracked her as she sashayed away, tugging a small sky-blue roll-along suitcase behind her. Her short, form-fitting dress showed off half her thighs, and the length of her toned calves made even longer by the 3-inch ice-pick heels on her feet. As a man who appreciated many things in life, one of which was the way a woman walked, Aiden would bet his year-end partner bonus the redhead's sensual, smooth gait was ingrained in her DNA like her eye color. The attention of every male in the place followed her. If she was aware of the effect she had, she gave no indication. All too soon, she was swallowed up in the moving crowd. Drunk Guy signed a receipt, a smarmy leer on his face, one Aiden recognized well. Somebody's planning on getting lucky. Unfortunately, it wasn't him. While the other guy finished his beer, Aiden did the same, polished off his burger, then put 2 20s in the folder for a $23 tab. With his duffel slung over his shoulder, he proceeded to his departure gate. With 45 minutes left before boarding, he stopped by the airport newsstand to grab a packet of gum, a bottle of way overpriced water, and the current edition of his favorite sports magazine. The newsstand was situated directly opposite the toilet, so Aiden made his way to the men's restroom, took care of business, then strolled toward his gate. Drunk Guy stood outside the bar, his forehead a mass of grooves and trenches, his mouth pressed into a thin line, filled with annoyance as he clutched his phone and turned his head right and left a number of times. Aiden didn't think he was waiting for a break in the walking crowd to move forward. Stood you up, didn't she? With a silent chuckle, he shifted his bag and kept moving. Eschewing the people mover for the added exercise he needed to offset the immobility of the next 2 hours in the air, Aiden's gaze roamed the terminal while he ambled along. He made it his business to always know the layout around him in order to stay alert for potential danger or for situations that could escalate out of control in a heartbeat. More times than he gave himself credit for, he'd been able to stop an event from turning ugly by sizing up the mood of a room and acting with swift efficiency to counteract a negative outcome. While panning the crowd, his attention was drawn to a person walking a few yards ahead of him. Something was familiar about the way the smooth glide of the walker eating up the space in front of her tickled his memory. She moved like the redhead from the bar, one hip gently rolling with a step, and the other doing the same. But it wasn't the redhead with the flowing curls in front of him. This woman had a short cap of blonde hair that didn't come anywhere near her neck and stood stick straight. She wasn't dressed in a second skin dress either, but a plain white short-sleeved shirt and a pair of straight-leg jeans. Shiny loafers shod her feet, not doomy stilettos. The redhead had been tall, the woman in front of him a pixie. She couldn't be more than 5'2". But that walk. Aiden's gaze tracked downward, and as the woman turned right and moved into a gated seating area, he saw the suitcase she tugged behind her, a small sky-blue roll-along. Well now. He glanced up at the gate number she turned into, and surprise, surprise, it was the same as his. She claimed a seat at the end of a row, then tucked her suitcase under the chair, her boarding pass clutched in her hand. Curiosity flowed through him. Could it be the same woman? The outward appearance said no, but the walk said, hell yeah. The waiting area was packed. He'd been lucky to grab the last available seat and hadn't balked at the first-class price in his zeal to get home. He'd have Josh tack the cost onto the client's final bill. Aiden weaved his way through his coworkers until he stood a whisper behind the woman, enough so he could observe her without her being aware he was. The cut of those cheeks and the angle of her jaw convinced him she was the woman from the bar, or if not, she had a twin. The notion died when she lifted her hand and dragged it around and behind an ear, the hair grazing her cheek now tucked, and gave the lobe a gentle squeeze. Intrigued, Aiden glanced down at her boarding pass, then made his way over to the check-in agent. With all the added security checks and balances now making air traffic so stringent, he wasn't sure his plan would work. 5 minutes later, courtesy of a subtle stretch of the truth, a quick flash of his investigator's license, and a smile he knew how to use to be charming, he had a new seat assignment. As he leaned a shoulder against a column and waited for the plane to board, he grinned when the elderly woman who'd been summoned up to the counter found herself in possession of a first-class seat at an economy price. Her stunned expression had been worth the deception. When it came time for him to board, he tossed his duffel over his shoulder again, waited until the fake redhead queued up, and then took a place in line a few travelers behind her. This promised to be an interesting flight home. So, Private Brothers Aiden, I don't have the book yet. If I did, I'd hold it up. But it goes on sale to the general public on September 8th, but it is available for pre-order now at all digital media. Hope you like that excerpt. See you next time.